My boyfriend's dad had me for Family Secret Santa last year, and this was one of his gifts. This is handmade paper, and I think it is the coolest thing ever. So let's use it for the first time. I just got this watercolor paint, and this shade is my favorite, so we're starting with that. All I know about this book is that it's from L'Amélie, Paris. Pronunciation apology. Anyways, we're going to use my favorite brush, the number 2 round from Princeton. In my setup, I also have my water cup and paper towel. I found the perfect water to pigment combo, so we're getting started. I've been doing drawings like this for years and years, but this is the first time I'm ever trying it with paint. New book, new paint. I am very excited. And I'm in the sunshine with my new favorite hat, so I'm really vibing. Now, what am I painting? Great question. I've been doing these line drawings for I've been doing these kind of line drawings since 2017, but I've never done them with paint. I usually use a Uniball or Micron pen, which are my favorite 2 pens, by the way. Drawing pens. I love writing with Muji pens. I basically start with a line and then just keep following it. The shape of the current line I'm making is dependent on what the line looks like before it. So I don't have an end image in mind. It's more of a zoning out and seeing where this piece will take me. I also don't even know if I would call this a full piece. It's more of a sketch, or it's more of my brain just playing. Anyone else do that? This has been my method for cooling down and just bringing my mind to a slower place. And it really is nice. I usually have a nice cup of tea with me, or on an extremely hot day like today, I have ice cold water. I expected to have to dip my brush into the paint and water so much more, but the paint really carried, so I was very relaxed. I want this book to become a kind of happy place where I can just open it wherever and make new painting, and then feel calm. So I plan to just roll through this book in lots of different colors. I'm open to my intentions changing though, so we'll see what happens, but I love this one. I always like how it seems kind of trippy in 3D, but it's actually flat. And this paper texture with the sparkly paint is just chef's kiss to me. I just found out that this type of drawing I've been doing is called Zen Tangles. There's loads of different ways to do them, but I thought I'd show you how I do them in case you want to try. Zen Tangles is such an oxymoron, I love it. I've always drawn them as a way to zone out and just untangle all the thoughts and stuff going on in my mind. I usually throw on a podcast or Audible and just use it as a way to escape the world for a moment, you know? So as you saw at the start, I began by just drawing a random angular line across the page. I know I'm using a paintbrush here, so this is technically painting, but I don't know, it's just drawing to me. I usually use a pen. I just got this new pink paint and had to use it though, so that's what's happening. Anywho, you're then going to draw another line right next to the first line you did, and you're going to completely follow the contours and angles of it. As you progress down the page, the shape of that line will change. What I do is follow that change closely with my next line, as opposed to just repeating the same first line. Once you've done a bunch of lines, how many times can I say lines, you're going to get a wavy effect from all this motion. I like to switch it up by using both sharp angles and curves. I'm using a Princeton Velvet Touch number 2 brush, but you can use anything. Now I have this flowy, trippy, cool, beautiful piece of paper, and things are feeling a little quieter in my mind. Let's chill out and paint together again using this brush, watercolor, a paper towel, and a water cup. We're going to add another page to this Zen Tangle book because I need to clear my mind. As you can see, I want to do a page in each of the different watercolor colors I have. So next up is a shimmery red. The exact shade is called Sea Star, and it's from KMS Watercolors. For this page, my intention is to do lots of flowy lines and see how they fold into each other. You'll see I continued the line even though the water ran out, because I really want to continue the gesture that was in my hand. I always feel like the first one you do is the best, so I'm just following the intuition of my first one, and then adding a pigmented wet line on top if I need to. This is how to make the prettiest shapes, in my opinion. When doing this type of painting, I have no specific idea for the outcome of the piece. All I knew for this one was that I wanted to make variations in the width of each line. So what I'm doing here is thickening the tops and bottoms of the curves. This makes it look a bit like ribbon, I realize. It won't stay looking like that for long though. I imagine where gravity would be bringing the curve if it was facing downwards like a raindrop. And that's where I add a few layers to get this thicker effect. Next, I'm going to follow each of these lines with another line, following the contours of the original line as precisely as I can. This is why I say I'm not really trying to predict how the picture is going to look. I don't really know what's going to emerge. And that's why I like doing this so much. I literally can't plan. All I do all day long is plan. So this book is where I come to rest my little mind. As you'll see, I've continued to follow the lines, and these funky looking things are appearing. Someone commented on one of the pink paintings like this I did that it looked like salmon. I see that, and this one is giving tuna. And suddenly, I'm dying for some sashimi. But I did go to Sugarfish 2 days ago, so I can chill. This is a fun part of the process. Eventually, some curves get so close together that they make a little bubble. In this case, it's a teardrop-shaped bubble. My goal is to completely fill in the white of the page, so I'm going inside of it. These shapes happen because of the subtle differences in the line before. When I was learning to draw still lifes in school, and what I was drawing didn't really look like the still life in front of me, my teacher would say, draw what you really see, not what you think is there. Sometimes when you're drawing, your brain says, oh, I know how this looks. I know this line goes there, for example. But you might be wrong. The perspective you have of that object in your head isn't always the perspective it actually is when you're drawing. So I used that and tried to look at what was actually in front of me and followed that previous line precisely. I think this is how such cool shapes happen. I think. Who knows? The point of these exercises is not to think. It's to observe and to chill out and look at this beautiful sparkly color. Until next time. It's time for us to watercolor another page in my book. I do these drawings to clear my mind. Working in here feels like walking on soft grass with bare feet, but for the mind. First, I need to find my next color using my color charts I've made for myself. I'm going to use this ruddy orange shade. These charts are all the different colors that I have across my palettes. Then we'll need paper towel, a water cup, and a brush. So far, I've used this round number 2 from Princeton for every page of this book. So we're going to do that again because I like it. We'll start by drawing a single random line across the page. A lot of my previous drawings were round, and so I'm going back to angular to try something fresh. Don't think too much about how this looks because it's going to be completely different at the end. From there, we'll just keep layering lines on top of our first line, and we're going to focus on following it precisely. So if your original line wasn't completely straight, your second one won't be either. The point is not to plan and see where the natural contours of the piece take you. That's how I get it to look so flowy and kind of alive at the end. This is really a weird mixture of looseness and precision. After using your brush for a while, it's going to get an edge. I place that in the corner to get the crispest lines. Now we have the hang of that, you're just going to keep going. Simply focus on adding lines and the mind will quiet as you go. Doing this type of drawing or exercise gives the same vibes as coloring. I also love coloring. It provides space to find that zone or flow state. Most of my other work takes a lot of advanced planning, so I love doing these drawings because I can't plan. The final thing will depend on the lines I did before it, and I don't know how those are going to look. So this is calming for my brain. It feels like I'm using the other side of it, which takes pressure off the precise part. Where I start each line segment depends on where I can get the best angle to make it the smoothest. For example, here was at the bottom, and here was at the connection. If I don't like how I did a line or I just didn't get the best angle, I'll thicken it or make a minor adjustment. I always do a full line before starting the next so you can gauge the piece's true flow. I didn't make up this type of drawing. It's called Tangles and there's loads of different ways to do it. This is just how I do it, but take this and run in any direction you'd like. I sometimes use a really thin black pen or a pencil and try and get different pressures. Everyone's using those markers to color in those coloring books, and those would be perfect for this too. Point is, you already have the supplies and can start doing this next time you're a bit stressed out. If you want watercolors though, all my favorites are linked in my Amazon shop. So is this type of paper, although not this exact book because it was a gift and I don't know where it was from. Using a handmade paper like this totally adds to the character of the drawing. It's a little bit bumpy, so it's an extra practice in rolling with the punches and just see how things turn out. Chances are very high you're still going to find it beautiful, even with those little flaws. I am full of advice today. We're starting to get into an area where new shapes emerge. The triangular area on the bottom left has shrunk, and after working on it a while, that area has just become a box. I didn't plan this, it just appeared. I think that's cool. As you draw, little dips will emerge or get swallowed, and that's what I mean by the drawing comes alive. If you keep being consistent with the natural contours, it'll all look smooth at the end. Over half the page is done now, so I'm going to start working below the original line. Finishing a big section like this feels like finishing a large chunk of a puzzle, like the sky or something. Extremely satisfying. I'm now just going to continue filling in the rest of the page. As I'm drawing, 9 times out of 10 I will be listening to something too. What though depends on my mood. Today I really needed some mind clearing, so I just put a nice background jazz playlist from Spotify. Sometimes though I'll listen to my favorite podcasts, and often I'm listening to my audiobook. That's my favorite because you can get completely absorbed in the story, and you're almost autopiloting the drawing, but it still turns out really pretty. I just feel like I have so much fun when I have that combo. I've been saying this is drawing. I know it's technically painting, but the way I draw is really linear, and this feels more like how I draw things than paint things. Someone recently commented on one of these videos of mine that this is not art, it's doodling. So call it whatever you want. I don't care. I'm having a great time. You might wonder if I get out much. Not really. I'm just kidding. I do sometimes, but I much prefer staying inside. With my candle and my tea and my drawing and my audiobook. And my cat and my blanket and the sunlight and my other cat and all my art supplies. This is actually a really good activity to do when you're on FaceTime as well. One of those where you just want someone's company but you're not necessarily talking the whole time. It's also so good for when someone's telling you really long gossip, so you can listen but be productive at the same time. Couldn't recommend more. We're nearing the end. These are the last few ones. If you stayed this long, I'm really impressed. You have a wonderful attention span. See how it looks kind of alive and trippy? Maybe that's just me, but I feel like this effect is so cool. Also, the best part of this whole piece is I realize it's the exact same color as my couch. You've made it just in time. I'm going to do another factory reset on my brain. This book is the place I go when I need to refresh stuff up there. I do these watercolor line drawings in a different way each time. This one is going to be a little different to anything else I've done so far in this book. I'm starting with squares instead of a single line. I'm simply going to plop them around the page randomly as my starting points. There's no rhyme or reason to the placement I'm doing, I'm just making it not a blank page anymore. Blank pages can be intimidating. Actually though, this one isn't so bad because it's handmade paper and so there's little bits of stuff up in there. I love working on it. I've turned the page so I can get the best angle in this corner. If I don't like the angle, it's hard to get a very smooth line. I've done different size squares in this rectangle for variety. Now that I'm happy with the amount of squares I've done, I'm going to go attack each square individually before moving on to the outside of the squares. This process breaks up the piece. Like when you're doing a puzzle and you get the sky done so then you can move on to the building. Compartmentalizing. I'm just going to draw shapes inside the shapes, as influenced by the line before it. Notice how the lines in the bottom left corner have a higher opacity. Clearly my process has been rhythmical. This seems to always be the place I start once I've dipped my brush into the paint. As I paint the lines, I'm carrying the pigment across the page, making it less and less on the brush, which is why some areas are more opaque and some are more transparent, aka more watery. You can really notice that from up here. The bottom left and top right corners are very different. Only if you take time to really notice that though. As I draw more lines, you'll notice that the boxes are in effect getting smaller and smaller inside each other, and that the time it takes from one side to the other lessens. The smaller the distance, the easier it is to get a straight line. If you're worried about doing your lines really straight, I'd start with very small areas to build your confidence. As we keep doing squares inside of squares, it might seem that each round is sped up a little more. But it's not, it's just the distance is smaller. Kind of a simple thought, but also kind of an optical illusion. I love completing the middle bits, it feels very satisfying, similar to checking something off your to-do list. By now I've completed all the insides of the shapes, and I have moved on to outlining them. This means the lines are going to start getting longer as opposed to smaller, which really changes the feel of what I'm doing. As the shapes get bigger and grow outwards, they're going to start touching. When that happens, I'm simply going to start seeing these new shapes as opposed to their individual squares. So here I'm just smoothly going all the way around this new shape. It kind of looks like a very stylized animal, the body on the bottom left and the head on the top right. You might see something completely different. You might think I'm a bit crazy. I might be a bit crazy, but it's my painting. A lot of the fun of this exercise for me is seeing what kind of shapes emerge, and then disappear once I keep adding more lines. When this is done, I can guarantee I won't be seeing a little animal anymore. I'm now starting to see the pattern on the back of a tortoise shell, or maybe a hallway. Now it's flipped on its side. It does still look like there's a clear top and bottom and sides though, right? I'm also totally seeing the Fushimi Inari shrine in Kyoto, which makes me very excited to get to orange. I'm exhausting all the red pigments I have, and then I'll be moving on to orange, and then yellow, etc. This book will then be a reference point of all the different pigments that I have, kind of like an extremely over-the-top swatch chart. We're now getting to the end, and we're able to close up these little spaces in the same way we closed up the squares. After expanding the shapes out so much, naturally we're going to create these smaller areas. It really feels like I'm getting to the end now, which is exciting. And my favorite parts are ones like these, where a single line closes the shape out. I think it's so interesting to see where the pigment has naturally pooled. I can imagine there being some pages of this book where I control that, but the focus of this one is to use the square shapes and see what happens. I think the differentiation makes it look really handmade. Can you still see the hallways or the tories or the tortoise shells? We've made so much progress and we now just have this blank jagged section. Luckily, it's a section where we're painting inward as opposed to outward, which is my favorite, if you haven't noticed. This could also be kind of pyramids from the top from this angle, and adding more lines makes them look like they're getting taller and higher off the ground. Or maybe you see them as going inward as opposed to outward. The beauty of art is that everyone can have a different perspective and they're all allowed. I'm curious to know how you see it. Now we have a very satisfying little area that's about to close up like a zipper. It may look like I've measured out the spacing perfectly, but that's actually not the case. Some lines are much further apart and others are closer together. By much, we are talking millimeters. This page is a little bigger than a piece of printer paper. We have now zipped up the final line, and another page is complete in my Zen Garden book. The Paper Bag Princess. Story by Robert N. Munch and art by Michael Marchenko. When Elizabeth was a beautiful princess, she lived in a castle and had expensive princess clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. Unfortunately, a dragon smashed her castle, burnt all her clothes with his fiery breath, and carried off Prince Ronald. Elizabeth decided to chase the dragon and get Ronald back. She looked all over for something to wear, but the only thing she could find that was not burnt was a paper bag. So she put on the paper bag and followed the dragon. He was easy to follow because he left a trail of burnt forests and horses' teeth. Finally, Elizabeth came to a cave with a large door that had a huge knocker on it. She took hold of the knocker and banged on the door. The dragon stuck his nose out and said, "Well, a princess. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." He slammed the door so fast that Elizabeth almost got her nose caught. Elizabeth grabbed the knocker and banged on the door again. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Go away. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." "Wait!" Elizabeth shouted. "Is it true that you're the smartest and fiercest dragon in the whole world?" "Yes," said the dragon. "Is it true," said Elizabeth, "that you can burn up 10 forests with your fiery breath?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon. And he took a huge deep breath and breathed out so much fire that he burned up 50 forests. "Fantastic," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath and breathed out so much fire that he burned up 100 forests. "Magnificent," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath, but this time nothing came out. The dragon didn't even have enough fire left to cook a meatball. Elizabeth said, "Dragon, is it true that you can fly around the world in just 10 seconds?" "Why, yes," said the dragon, and jumped up and flew all the way around the world in just 10 seconds. He was very tired when he got back, but Elizabeth shouted, "Fantastic! Do it again!" So the dragon jumped up and flew around the whole world in just 20 seconds. When he got back, he was too tired to talk, and he lay down and went right to sleep. Elizabeth whispered very softly, "Hey, dragon." The dragon didn't move at all. She lifted up the dragon's ear and put her head right inside. She shouted as loud as she could, "Hey, dragon!" The dragon was so tired, he didn't even move. Elizabeth walked right over the dragon and opened the door to the cave. There was Prince Ronald. He looked at her and said, "Boy, you're a mess. You smell like ashes. Your hair is all tangled, and you're wearing a dirty old paper bag. Come back when you're dressed like a real princess." "Ronald," said Elizabeth, "your clothes are really pretty, and your hair is all neat. You look like a real prince, but you're a bum." And they didn't get married after all. This was The Paper Bag Princess, a story by Robert N. Munch and art by Michael Marchenko. I made a wavy one to show you that it's still cool even if it's not straight. So I'm going to start out with a bit of a wavy, floopy line. As usual, very little rhyme or reason, just kind of putting something down on the paper. This will be our guide for the entire rest of the drawing. I know it can be frustrating not to do exactly straight lines, but let's just release that and lean into something with a slightly different look. In typical Lizzie Zentangle fashion, we're just going over the top of each previous line, following the contours of what was before it. This is where the wavy part can actually be used to your advantage. Not being straight means there's little divots and stuff to play around with, which I think actually makes it easier to get lost in a good way. If they're so fun, Lizzie, why don't you do them this way? Because it's not my style. I always use really, really straight lines in my work, and that's across medium. So I do that whether I'm watercoloring, painting on fabric or canvas. It's just my vibe as an artist. I would suggest doing lots of different versions of this and seeing which one you like best. And I do actually like this style, by the way. I'm putting it in my sacred book, which I am determined not to quote-unquote mess up in. I've messed up plenty. But I want every page to be just as beautiful. And part of that beauty is that every page, in addition to having a different color, has a slightly different focus. Many of the other pages are focused on the linear quality. On this page, I'm focusing on how the pigment is carried on the water on the brush. I have been starting every line on the bottom or left and carrying it across the page in as much as I can one swift motion. Sometimes I've had to double dip when the water runs out. Usually my tangles have more angles, which rhymes, and so I don't need to do this, because there are natural stopping points for me to re-dip once I get to an angle. Anyways, back to the lines all starting in the same place. You'll see that there's a much higher pigment concentration on the left side. So while the page is flat, the combo of this color distribution and the waves makes it look wavy. Cool! Do you see there's this cluster of color where I had to dip again? If you remember the squares piece I just did, this is the same reason why the corners had more pigment. Meanwhile, this is kind of looking like rock formations in Arizona, and also kind of like bacon, and also kind of like my cat Parmesan because she is orange and stripy, and I will use any excuse to bring her up. We're coming to the end of the page. This page was much quicker than my usual ones. It took about 30 minutes. That's because I wasn't concentrating as hard as I usually need to for the straight lines. It's really giving years of millions of rocks now, isn't it? Who would have thought from my little old wiggly line at the start that this beautiful, funky pattern would come out of it? Okay, go try your own wiggly version. It's time for the next Zentangle in my book, and the first one with this beautiful shimmery palette. To start, we're going to go in and get rid of this blank piece of paper. I'm going to do that by adding triangles and dotting them all around the page until I feel like I'm done. Someone commented earlier that I should try a triangle Zentangle, so thank you for that idea. So far so good. There's no method to these triangles. I'm just popping them all around the page at whatever angle I feel like. I'm keeping them all roughly the same size. Our page is now broken up into inside of the triangles and outside of the triangles, which is much easier to approach than just a blank piece of paper. I'm going to start on the inside of the triangles first. I'm going to closely follow the exterior line with a line inside, and then I'm going to continue doing that until I reach the middle of the triangle. Breaking up a page like this is a great way to have a drawing going that you can't work on for long stretches of time. For example, my cat is really unwell at the moment, poor Parmesan. So I've been doing a couple triangles, then I go check on her, come back, do a couple more. This is probably a great activity for moms who can slink away for a little 5 minutes at a time. Or it's great if you're eating a snack. You can fill in a triangle, then have a bite of chips, then fill in the next triangle. I always like to have some kind of drawing like this on my desk. That way, if I need a little time to kill, I can just add to it. And it's so much less daunting than having a big official piece. I find there's no pressure with this kind of drawing, which makes it a lot of fun and very relaxing, which is exactly why I do them. If you need to be on the phone a lot for work, another great idea would be to have this at your desk and fill them in every time you're on hold or waiting. I think. I've never done that, but I can envision it. We're almost done with the inside of the page. It's probably not exactly scientifically, but to me this feels like the halfway point. Like if you're doing a puzzle and you did all the land and you then have the sky. Now that those are filled in, we're going to start doing the same technique with lines on the outside of the triangles. As you go, you're going to come across some that are very close together. The gap between these two is too small for me to make a line between. So instead, I'm going to swallow the triangle on the right into my current line drawing. I like to totally complete a segment before moving on to the next. I've now decided to go for this triangle at the edge. This was a random choice. I like to pick some at different parts of the page so that the lines going outward organically grow and aren't clustered in groups at the top or bottom. Here, I found that the little triangle on the left was a little too close for its own line, so it's going to become swallowed up in this bigger shape. For the most part, I don't go off the edge of this book. This is handmade paper with a deckled edge, which I love because I think it looks a little more free than a cut paper. This book is from L'Amelie Paris, and I also have individual pieces of this kind of paper in my Amazon shop. As I paint, I'm thinking about making my lines straight on this drawing. As you know, each drawing in this book has a little bit of a different focus. Here, I am experimenting with these solid lines and seeing what other new kinds of shapes emerge. As we swallow up more and more triangles, the blank areas of the page are going to be in the minority, and they're going to be kind of oddly shaped because the original triangles were at all different angles. Some new triangles will be made. You can also see a rectangle that's going to happen at the top. If you reverse psychology the painting, it's kind of like you're excavating the piece to find these little shapes that are existing amongst it. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but I enjoy thinking about it this way. I find that when I'm really immersed in this type of drawing, my brain has the freedom to think of things like that.
And for me at least, it's pretty rare to have times like that as an adult, so I really cherish these painting times. At this kind of junction, I'm going to use the tip of the brush to make the points extend all the way through the shape. Otherwise, and in a lot of the rest of the painting, I've been using the brush flat. That makes these consistently wide lines that I've been doing. Here's another section that I thought was too small to do the flat technique. I want to convey the same thickness, but I'm going to use the tip of the brush to do that. Otherwise, I thought it could be a bit messy. We're really closing in on this drawing now, and there's not a lot of white of the paper left. This whole process also feels like something slightly growing outwards and outwards until it takes over the whole page, with, of course, the help of my brush. We have now reached our first treacherous pathway. I want to focus very hard to get all the way through this and still leave some white on the sides. It was successful, so I'm now going to do the second side and make a connection before hyping myself up for this third pathway. It was very skinny, so a little more difficult, but I think I did pretty well, all things considered. Here are two examples of new triangles that have emerged. I can imagine that once I look at this section when the paper is complete, it's going to be kind of tricky to differentiate between what was an original triangle and what was an original white space. Again, I've switched to using the tip for a little bit of uniformity. On some pages, the focus is to have every line the exact same thickness, but here I more just want every area filled in the same way, which is why I'm doing the pointy. I'm so excited to finish this book and flip through it. I think I might put it out in my living room as a coffee table book for people to come over and have a look at what their favorite ones are. But for now, we've reached the final gap in this drawing. I think it's an extremely irregular pentagon, although I am most certainly not a math girl, so feel free to correct me. As I close in, I always get a little bit sad that the piece is ending. Even if I do a mini triangle style again, which I don't think I will for a while because I have a lot I want to try, no two drawings are going to be the same, like snowflakes. I love when things are like snowflakes. So I'm enjoying my last moments here. It also inspires my next piece though. Doing this has made me decide that I want my next one to be really big triangles. See you then.
It's time for us to watercolor another page in my drawing book. This time, a Halloween edition. I have moved through the color spectrum and am now on light orange, the exact same shade as those pumpkins from Trader Joe's. With this orange, however, our first line is going to be inspired by a spider web. I'm not a very creepy girl, so this is as celebratory as you'll get out of me in October. As usual, the first line of the drawing is both important and not important. Important in that it sets the vibe for the rest of the piece, and unimportant in that we won't even recognize it when the piece is done. This one is going to be interesting because the web shape has some really cool dips and corners. This will give the brush lots of rhythmical ways to dance around the page. The first line is also what divides the piece into sections. Our web shape has created an inside and an outside. We are currently working on filling in the inside by following the contours of the previous line exactly. You'll notice that the brush naturally narrows as it slips up into the corners, and it widens out at the heaviest part of the curves. We're going to continue matching that throughout the entire drawing. Or painting, I haven't really decided yet. Whatever it is, the first bit is complete, and we can now move on to the outside of the web. If you're new to Zentangles, a shape like this is a really good place to start. Corners are a place to naturally stop, and because there are so many of them around the web, no areas are too overwhelming. And you're going to build that muscle memory very quickly. Repeating the same shape, even though they get bigger or smaller depending on whether you're inside or outside of the first line, is practice for your hand, and you're going to get more used to it and confident in doing it as the piece progresses. I'm beginning to notice how much I love this specific pigment. A higher concentration of watercolor is that light orange, while a higher concentration of water makes it seem kind of yellow. Since we have been doing these repetitive movements, the water and pigment have been pooling in the same places each line. This is turning into a really cool color pattern, independent of the line pattern also happening on this page. This page, for anyone curious, is made of handmade paper, and the entire journal is from L'Amélie Paris. I'm using a round number 2 Princeton brush. This is my favorite everyday brush, and is the same one for all the pink and red drawings we flipped through at the beginning of this video. The paint is from my favorite portable watercolor palette, and all of these things can be found in my supply lists in my bio. The only thing scarier than ghosts and goblins is gatekeeping standard art tools that anyone should have access to if they want to. Am I right? As you'll see, we're coming very close to the edge of the page. I use the edge of the page as a boundary and complete my brush strokes before they go over the edge. You could paint all the way to the edge, or stop much further from the edge to make a border. Or, just had another idea, you could washi tape the edges and carry your paint strokes over the washi tape. That will make a really crisp border. You'll see the edge of the paper in this journal is really beautiful and deckled. This is a feathered edge as opposed to a cut edge. I think it looks really pretty, so I like it. Back to the Halloween thing. I saw that someone wanted one of these on black paper, and I love that idea, so I'll be doing that soon. Isn't it funny that I randomly started this book off with pink paint in August, and I've been slowly getting through the pages and colors anytime I feel like it or have spare time, and I naturally got to this light pumpkin orange around October 31st. I will definitely take this as a positive sign. I think that I should keep working in this book, but also hopefully that I'm on track for my life. Once we get to the corners, the lines can be really smooth and fun. The only place to stop is at the deckled edge of the page, and the only thing to focus on is the curvature of the previous line. If you follow it carefully, it's kind of like a ripple effect, so your muscle memory can stay consistent for this area. That frees up the brain to have a little peace and quiet in my mind, so I always really enjoy these corner areas, and final little sections in general, like this middle divot. Since this page and drawing are so rhythmical, my hand can distract my brain. It's like my hand is saying, "Come on, brain, let's go for a nice little walk." And the brain is saying, "Oh, I had so much to do today, but that sounds better. Wow, look at these flowers. And the sky is so blue, and this grass is really soft. And was that a bunny? Anxiety who?" Welcome back to my Zentangle book, aka the place where I go to clear my mind and do some art. We've moved along the color spectrum and are now at orangey yellow. I'm using the color chart I made for myself to pick a color, and I'm going to start by doing some big triangles all over the page. When you're tangling, you can start with any shape. I often do a jagged or a curvy line, which breaks the page up into top and bottom. You can also do shapes like these triangles, circles, squares. That breaks the page up into inside the shape and outside the shape. Whatever you choose to do, the point is to get rid of the blank page. Blank pages are a bit scary, and once you have your shapes going, you can just paint and be free. Or draw. You can also do this with pens, pencils, markers, you name it. As you'll see, I've started by going on the inside of my triangle. I'm turning on my focus and carefully following the shape that I have on the outside. I'm not trying to create the exact same shape inside. I'm actually just forgetting it's a shape at all and trying to follow whatever line is there exactly. This method creates natural contours and will make your piece look more alive and connected at the end. I'm going to take my time filling in each of the triangles on my page. I dotted the triangles around at all kinds of random angles. I didn't have a strategy on where to put them. This is because I want the final piece to be a surprise, and the final piece is completely led by the lines you create during it. There are definitely ways to manipulate how the final piece will look, and I do that sometimes. But today I just wanted to chill out and only worry about the line I was currently working on at each time. Having to focus so much on something so soft really eradicates all the rest of the noise in my mind. The combination of this color and this shape is definitely giving corn tortilla, which makes me hungry. Luckily, I'm going out for dinner soon with my friend and her family. The more I do these Zentangles, the more I realize I completely zone out as I'm drawing my lines. I kind of find myself on autopilot, and then I look back at what I just did and say, "Oh, that's cool." My recommendation for how to find peace with this kind of project is simply to focus on the line that you're making as opposed to the gap between the lines. If they touch, no one dies. In the grand scheme of the piece, it's going to be really hard to notice that. And why would you focus on the one little mistake as opposed to all the beautiful big lines you made? That would just be a bit silly. As you can see, we've now completed all the insides of the triangles, and we're now going to move on to drawing lines on the outsides. I like to think of this as the midway point of the piece. I'm going to draw a single line around each triangle so they all grow outward at around the same rate. As they expand, they're naturally going to start swallowing each other up. When that happens, you're simply going to keep the line flowing around the new triangle.
so it's going to turn from a triangle into a totally random new shape. This double corn tortilla in the center that I'm making right here is about to connect. And this shape looks like a bikini top or an upside down back to front yellow version of the Nepal flag. Depends how you look at it. See how they're connected here? I'm just going to keep drawing my line all the way up until it's this one big shape. My favorite part is when I need to squeeze between two shapes. Wow, look at that. It takes a lot of focus, but it's doable. It can be really tricky to do very long and very straight lines. So what I will do is go as far as I can before I start to feel wobbly. It's all about elbow placement, I've realized. Once I feel like I'm losing control, I will take my brush off. I will then add some more paint and water to it and reposition my elbow and start from wherever I took it off the page. That's why some of the lines seem to get darker in the middle, like here. If you missed my marker video, I just need to update you that Parmesan is feeling so much better. Thank you so much for all your kind words. We just moved and she was feeling extremely anxious, which is so LA of her, and the stress brought out some symptoms of some upper respiratory viruses that she'd had since she was born in a shelter as a kitten. Since I rescued her, I guess she's been so happy that it hasn't come out, but she was not a fan of the move. If only she could Zentangle, because that really reduces anxiety. We're now closing in on these mini shapes. I like to go in with the tip of my brush and make a point so that it's all as uniform as can be. It always feels like I'm getting to the end of the drawing at this kind of point, which is sad but exciting at the same time. I was thinking about going live. Would you join and want to watch that? I know these videos are satisfying because I take out the cuts and it's just a smooth line. I wonder if it would be as nice for you if it was full live. If you'd watch it, let me know. My next Zentangle is going to be Sunshine Yellow, and I'd love to know what shape you think I should do. I haven't done circles in a while, so that could be good. And we are now done with this large triangle piece. To me it looks like pyramids going downwards. I love noticing the difference between this big triangle piece and a little triangle piece. If you are unimaginably full after Thanksgiving and you have peopled enough for the next 4 months and you just want to sit on your phone in silence, this is the video for you. Chill out and get lost in the zone while I paint some Zentangles. By very popular demand, today we're doing stars in a lovely classic sunshine yellow color. We have started by sprinkling different organically shaped stars all over the page. This breaks the piece of paper up into sections and makes it more digestible. This makes me feel much less intimidated by the page, and as I complete each section as if I'm checking off something on a to-do list. Satisfying, fun, and peaceful. By now the page is broken up into 2 main sections. Inside of the stars, which I've started working on, and outside of the stars, which I'll do afterwards. We're going to fill in each star by following the outline closely on the inside. Once the line connects, we're going to do the same inside the star we just made. And we're going to keep doing that until each star is filled in. Since the stars are hand-drawn, the shape actually becomes something totally different once we get to the inside, because we're not trying to draw an exact star inside. We're just trying to follow the original shape as if it was arbitrary. This one makes a little shooting star shape. That's cute. Simply following the lines we've made instead of trying to create another shape gives our mind a little bit of a rest. It's kind of like taking your foot off the gas and going on autopilot. Your brain can revel in the lack of responsibility and say, oh my gosh, thank you. When I haven't given my brain a break like this in a while, it feels like I'm going to short circuit up there. And I notice I feel much more anxious. And no thank you. I'd like it to feel like a quiet spa up there where no one raises their voice. If these stars were blue, they would definitely be giving Dallas Cowboys. Did anyone watch today? We're nearing the end of the inside of the stars. I like to think of this as phase 2 of the drawing. Or painting, it's kind of both. Phase 1 was simply getting the first outline of the shapes onto the page. This phase is the fastest. By the way, I'm using Japanese watercolor or Gansai, this palette, and the Princeton Round No. 2 brush. This is my favorite brush, and I use it for, so far, all the Zentangles in this book. We are now on to phase 3, which is the final one. Our canvas, so to speak, has now become what's been left untouched on the piece of paper. We're going to follow the outline of each star, but this time on the outside. As opposed to how we did the inside of the stars, which was one shape at a time, we're going to move around the outside of the page one by one. This isn't the rule, because there are no rules, but this is how I like to do it with this kind of drawing, where there's lots of different shapes. It means each star grows pretty organically at the same rate. Obviously some are bigger than others. so even with the same line, they will grow further. We're going to start to see new shapes emerging. A diamond is being created between these two little stars. We're going to come back to that later and fill it in. This star is starting to connect to the one below it, so let's follow the line down there and see what happens. Because of the spacing around the stars, this current outer layer has swallowed up too. We have now created a megastar, and we're just going to keep painting along until we bump into even more stars. Eventually, they're all going to swallow each other up. When we started, the majority of the page was the negative space. As our lines progress, the paint is going to overtake, and the negative space will become the minority. As I'm painting, I love to pay attention to this transition. It happens so smoothly that it can be easy to miss. We've reached our first blocked off corner. We're going to continue this one angle of the star until we fill it out completely. By this point in the painting, once there's a small area of white paper that's completely trapped, I like to go ahead and fill it in. This one is extremely angular and is about to become two even smaller shapes. Seeing what shapes unfold is like watching a plant develop that you grew since it was a baby seed. It's similar to all the leaves unfurling into their unique shapes. I like to wonder in my head about what each shape looks like. This negative space at the bottom of the page kind of looked like a pair of cartoon pants on its side. And now we have an italic rectangle. All of these shapes are totally open for interpretation. I like when things don't have a right or wrong answer, which is why I don't really like math. Nothing to do with the fact that I'm not good at it or anything. Anyways, I love to see how two different people can interpret the same shape in such different ways. So if you see a cool shape, let me know and I'll try and find it. The legs of the stars have definitely created a lot of diamonds. I can see two in this frame right now. Can you see them? I also realized we've unintentionally created a diagonal line of stars, from the top left corner of the page to the bottom right. Because of their proximity, they've become one big shape, and we've been doing one giant line around them. These also kind of look like some flowers that I'm forgetting the name of. They grow in a long row. We've now come to a fun part where we're filling in one of the little diamonds. I like doing these diamonds because I can usually do them in one or two smooth lines without having to take my brush off the paper. They're small enough that I don't need to re-up on paint or water. This shape we're working on right now kind of looks like a Monopoly house that's about to fall over. This is the first time that I've painted a Zentangle of stars. I don't think I would have thought of that if it wasn't for your suggestions. You guys have given me such good ideas for starting points, so please keep them coming. I see them all, and I've been adding them to a running list that I can pull from when I paint. Which ones I choose depend on my mood and the color I'm about to use, and how many people wanted that shape. When I mentioned I was doing yellow next, stars was definitely the most popular, followed closely by circles, so that's what's going to be next. If you haven't seen your suggestion come up, just know it's on my list and I will get to it. Or at least I will try to. As we've been moving along, we've somehow created a curve. I don't know how that happened because all the original lines were straight, but I definitely like it. The blank areas of the page are really now being driven out. Especially with the yellow and the stars, it's kind of giving expecto patronum. We are now filling in the final corner of this piece. This star on the right is the final last man standing who hasn't been swallowed up by another line. Although, this is the end of his days. He is for sure about to get swallowed up. A little pocket here was created that's going to attach his leg to the rest of the art. With the closure of this area, the leftover blank space has been broken into two. We're going to attack them one at a time, starting with a sole line around this last star. This blank area here kind of looks like a bird with a large beak whose head is pointing up. We've filled in his beak now, but did anyone see that? Quite cute. Oops, I realized there were actually 3 blank spaces. I hadn't noticed the top corner. But with that, we're almost down to 2 again. I like to complete each brush line before I get to the edge of the paper. This is handmade paper, not handmade by me unfortunately, but that's what gives it the deckled edge look. So there are no sharp edges, and I like the way the paint meets the edges to be a similar vibe. We have reached our final pocket, and you're so close to seeing how this page is going to look when it's all filled in. Sometimes at the end, it's hard to even remember what the original lines were. I want you to look at the final page and see if you can figure it out. First, let's enjoy the last little section. Goodbye, blank paper. And here we have our sunshine yellow star Zentangle. This makes me feel happy and almost ready to people again. Welcome back to my Zentangle book where today we're using a yellow shimmer. We're doing circles, so if you have that thing where you don't like holes, this is a trigger warning and I'd skip this video. We're going to start by drawing shimmery circles all over the page. Circles can be a little tricky to get in one swoop. So you'll notice that for most of them, I go halfway down one side of the circle, then reposition my arm and go halfway down the other side of the circle. This one's kind of good though, look at that. We're going to do this until we've filled in the page with as many circles as feels right. The circles are all medium or small medium. The page is now broken up into inside the circles and outside the circles. We're going to do things a little bit differently today and start our zentangling outside the shapes. Usually I start on the inside and do the outside last, but I thought we'd switch it up. We're going to start circling at the top of the page and work our way down. This should give a bit of a waterfall effect once we get all the way to the bottom. Pretty soon we're going to start to see some in-between shapes emerge. And we're going to fill them in right as we see them because it's kind of fun. I like watching them disappear and become part of the design of the piece. You'll see at the top, as soon as some started to happen, I filled them in. We're now going to keep making our way around the circles, flowing into open spaces and closing them up with our lines. It's kind of as though the yellow shimmer is floating all the way down the page slowly like lava and swallowing up whatever circle it sees. It then flows smoothly along the rounded shapes, almost like a magnet is pulling it all the way around. Once it gets to a corner, it's going to bop around again until it finds its next curve. This will inevitably create some cute triangles. Once the line gets all the way to the right, we go back to the left and start the whole thing again. Doing a piece like this is very rhythmical. I feel like it slows down my mind and my heart rate, which I like to welcome anytime. Each line we do down the page is going to be different, because once it hits a circle, it's going to change form. So even though it's slow and meditative, I still find it exciting. We're going to continue these lines from the left to the right all the way down the page. We're going to find ourselves in some diamond nooks and crannies like this, and we're going to effortlessly flow out the same way we came in, and we'll make a new diamond inside. I had a handful of comments requesting that I don't yap throughout these videos. In my stars video, I said you could take a break from the madness of peopling at Thanksgiving and take some minutes to sit in silence. I meant that literally as in, you can sit in silence. I will be talking. That's because people like the voiceover visual meditation aspect. Also, I like that too. As nice as it would be, watercolor doesn't really make a noise when it brushes across the paper. At least, I don't have the high-tech microphones to make that happen. So, if I wasn't to talk in the video, the noise would be of the city background, which is buzzing except for the odd leaf blower or helicopter. So, if you're someone who wants silence on these videos, I recommend turning off your sound. A moment for this smooth little swoop. I'm not going to add captions this time, so hopefully that helps with the no voice for anyone who doesn't want it. Let me know if you like it better without captions or if you miss them. I'm curious. Markers do make a noise when they're drawing though, and I did make a non-yap video with them. It's blue and it's called Marker ASMR and it's a couple rows down from this video. We're now getting to the bottom of the page. We're filling in any blank spots that have been left untouched and closing up these 3 gaps that have been left unattended. I really like the triangle shape that's made when the circles come close together. We're now going to work on the final corner of the outside of the painting, which will conclude phase 2 and move us onto phase 3. I'm going to miss the outside, but the inside is really fun too. By doing the outside first, it's really clear to see the shapes that have been left over. We're now going to do exactly what we did on the outside, but on the inside of the circles. Again, often in 2+ swoops. The repositioning is sometimes necessary because it ensures control, which in turn secures precision. And that is the name of the game when I zentangle. This is now a good time to fill in any little bits we missed, as we move along to completing each circle. This paint is kind of looking gold, but in the sunshine it's shimmery yellow. I have a whole set of different gold and silver watercolors. We're going to get to those eventually, and they're going to be really pretty. This palette is a pearlescent watercolor set from Artist Loft, and I got it at Michael's. You can zentangle with any material though. I really like doing watercolor because I find it smooth and soft. When I'm on the go, I'll do it with paper and pen, usually a micron or uniball pen. I also like the Muji ones. That's a great material for when you just want to throw it in your bag and Zentangle when you have a spare moment. Meanwhile, watercolors are great for having a little setup on my desk. I pretty much always keep my watercolors and my Zentangle book out, so when I have the time and feel like I need to calm down, I can reach for it really easily. I often find the hardest part of something is starting, so when it comes to a mindfulness exercise like this, I try and make the barriers to starting as small as possible. I just watched Gladiator 2 in the cinema, and this pattern is starting to look like it could be the armor of one of the gladiators. I couldn't have predicted that at all when I started. One of my favorite parts of doing these designs is seeing what kind of things emerge. It's nice to not at all plan something sometimes and just see what happens organically. It's like when a plant grows and the leaves tumble out in whatever way they're supposed to be. One time I was forest bathing in Hawaii and the guide said, "Nature makes no mistakes." That always sat nicely with me and I think about it often. You wouldn't look at a leaf and say, "Oh my gosh, why would it grow in that way?" At least, I hope not. You'd say, "Wow, leaf, cool." Think of Zentangles in the same way. It would be one thing if we were trying to convey a certain image, like a portrait. That needs to look like the person. But with these, we're just going for it. We're being creative, finding the flow, and zoning out. So whatever shape that takes is just how it's meant to be. That's why it doesn't bother me if things don't look perfect or if the lines touch. When it's complete and we look at the big picture, we're taking it all in as one beautiful piece of paper with some nice colors on it. There may be some funky things here and there, but overall it was really fun. I know you want hearts next, so they're coming, don't worry. Let's take a nice little brain nap together because it's time for another Zentangle. We've moved through the color spectrum in this book and we have finally come to our first green. We're going to be doing trapezoids or rhombuses or italic rectangles as I called them the other day. Just some mathy vibes, really. We'll start by breaking up the page into inside of the shapes and outside of the shapes by drawing the outlines. There's no system to how we're putting them down on the page. We're just making it not blank anymore. And now that that's done, we're going to go in and fill in each box with our Zentangle lines. We're going to do that by taking our paintbrush on the inside corner and following it all the way around the shape until it meets the same line again. We're then going to keep doing that inside each shape we make until we completely fill it up. All we're going to worry about is the current line that we're making. We're going to forget about everything else for these few minutes and just focus on making some art. As we focus on consistently adding these lines all over the page, as guided by our original shapes, we're going to notice how the page develops into something beautiful. We're going to do one shape at a time, filling them in slowly and surely. So now we've moved on to this prime italic rectangle. I know I said hearts would be next, and they are the next one I'm going to paint, but psych, I'd already made this. But they're coming, don't worry. I'm also going to do those in a bit of a different way, and I'm really excited to show you. Maybe you can paint along with me as I do it. I really like doing these kinds of shapes because you can get such straight lines. To me, it feels like the straighter the line, the more engaged and focused I am in the drawing. It feels like this process is literally ironing out the crinkles in my mind. All of the worries, all of the anxieties, all of the embarrassment or stress. Goodbye. I actually just turned 30 yesterday, and while I thought that might stress me out a bit, I actually feel really good about it. I feel like I know myself a lot better now that I've had 30 years with myself. So I'm much easier to get along with than I was when I was a little confused and 21. I can predict how I'm going to approach a situation and what might really upset me or also what might really excite me, and that I finally kind of have the know-how to steer myself away from what I don't want to be doing and toward what I would like. I'm no expert out here, but I have been really paying attention and I think it's paying off. Something I do really like is painting Zentangles alone in a warm apartment with a nice beverage such as a latte or an Earl Grey, or recently some Airborne because it has been sniffling season, or an ice cold water with some liquid IV,
or a hibiscus liqueur. So that's all my favorite drinks, if anyone was wondering. I've found that when I have a slow morning, I have a really, really nice day. Most of the time, anyway. But I find that's the best way to set myself up for success. Right now, while I'm in London, my routine isn't quite happening because I'm not at home with all of my things, but I'm doing my best. But when I am home in LA, I wake up and I watch the sunrise come up over downtown and all the beautiful palm trees. And that's my kind of slow, no-pressure wake-up situation. It feels like the day is saying, "Good morning, Lizzie. We're about to start soon. Get in the right headspace and then meet me in the sitting room." And I say, "Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you not rushing me because I just woke up and I'm still very tired. But I am excited to see the sunrise because this pinky orangey you got going on is my favorite color." And that is when I stop talking to myself and do my journal. In my journal, I write about how I want the day to go. I put all the what ifs and, oh, I need to do this next, and oh my god, what does she think about that, into the journal. During this process, they get out of my head and in there. Oh, by the way, we're now drawing on the outside of the shapes, if you hadn't noticed. Now that they're all filled in, we were able to move to the second half of the piece, the outside. And our lines are going to slowly but surely swallow up all the blank space we have left. Soon the shapes are going to start to touch, and that is a really fun part that I can't wait to get to. Back to the morning routine. After the journal, I head to the sitting room and have a coffee and check my phone. Do I reply things yet? Depends on my mood. Then, if I'm not doing a workout, my favorite thing is to start painting. I find it really calming to start off my creativity that way. Let's watch this line go through this little cavern. She's going to keep going downwards and then hit this other shape, and then the line is just going to go around it. I like to pretend that the line is like a flowing stream, and it just keeps going and it doesn't get too caught up in what it hits. It's just naturally like, oh, I guess we're going downwards now, which is a mentality I try and have as well. If you can't go through something, are you just going to sit there and be mad about it? That would be a bit silly. We're now onto our first negative space shape. It kind of looks like a boot, or an upside-down abstract cartoon bird neck and beak. This happened because the lines outside the shapes all around it grew outward until this was created. I love to fill in these little areas when they pop up because it feels like a big accomplishment, another area to check off the list. Sometimes only a single line fits in at the end, so that's what we're going to do, and we're going to loop it around the beak just a little. Now that that line is complete, we're moving back onto the outside of our shapes. So when I first get in the studio in the morning, I like to just get some kind of creativity out. I find that the hardest part is starting in just about anything in life. So if I start with something that is fun and I'm confident in and is soothing, I'm more likely to be more productive and more creative as the day goes on and I work on other projects. Sometimes if I'm feeling naughty and procrastinatory, is that a word? I will do an entire Zentangle, which usually takes about an hour, sometimes more. But usually I'll just do about 20 minutes of one, and then I come back to it the next day. I love these because you can really start and stop at any time. But it is kind of like a puzzle where when you just see one little bit you could complete, you kind of have to do it. But a piece like this shouldn't feel overwhelming. It is so fun and the perfect activity to do while you're finishing your morning coffee. Or you can say, I will paint for this 20-minute podcast and then I will get rolling on whatever life has in store for that day. We're making huge progress on this piece and now we just have the top half of the blank area. Another llama head looking kind of section is about to be created on the left once we turn this corner and wrap around. With this color and the shape, it kind of looks like these could be mazes from above, in a field or a big garden. In the summer, definitely needs a bit of water, doesn't it? We're about to go through the center of these two shapes. I'm going to try and hit it right in the middle. I like when the piece is done for it to be hard to tell what the first shape was, because that's not even the point to me anyway. It's just meant to become one big line party, which sounds very sketch, doesn't it? We've now created a triangle for ourselves to fill in.
I find this so meditative to go line by line and get it closed up. Is the green growing or is the white shrinking? Or are they working in perfect harmony? I like to think that they're friends. Makes things feel more seamless. And who doesn't love good communication? We have now moved on to what's going to be our last llama head. We're going to use our lines to shrink him down until he becomes no more. From this vantage point, it kind of looks like we're looking down into spirals, angular spirals, kind of like a vortex. But it doesn't feel scary, it feels more trippy. Okay, goodbye, little llama. We are now at the final edge of our paper. To me, this really looks like an upside-down owl. I love to play around with what I think I see in each shape. It feels so simple and calming that the other thoughts in my brain are like, you know what, I'm just not getting involved there. Which was my whole intention. So that's great. We're going to see little shapes. We're going to see little colors. We're going to see some nice lines. And then we're going to go about our day and feel peaceful. I missed a spot. So good night or good morning. I hope you have an amazing sleep or a wonderful day. By the way, this video was almost 10 minutes long, so very well done.